boys and girls. Welcome to day 13. It is the classroom teacher lesson. Let's get started. Okay, so in yesterday's video with Mrs. Foley, you completed handout 18A, which you analyzed characters, words, and actions. You completed handout 18B, in which you found evidence and elaboration based on Sound of Running Feet and Chief Joseph's beliefs and values. I want you to turn to pages 6 and 7 in your novel. And we're going to reread a certain part of the text, and then we're going to answer some questions. So, page 6. We'll go ahead and pause the video now if you need to get your book. Okay, page 6. At dawn, the wind no longer blew from Hawk's Peak. It blew from all three of the towering peaks, down upon our village. No fires burned outside that morning because of the wind. I went through the great lodge and divided the coos roots we had gathered. I told my father about the white people who were living in a cabin on one of the creeks that fed Wallowa River, how they were digging gold. I said nothing about the hole I had shot in the woman's copper pan. They're the first, but more are on the way, he said. He often talked to me, for he had no sons. Unlike other girls in our village, I often talked back. We will stop them. Here we stand, I said. I felt angry when I thought of white people cutting the trees and planting wheat where our horses and cattle roamed. No, daughter, we're few and they are many. They're locusts and they'll devour us. Not if we stand and fight. If we fight, they will devour us all the quicker. My father turned his back, which meant he would not listen to another word. His mind was made up. I do not like this wind, he said. It sounds like many horses running. Joseph, my father, son of old Joseph, was an honored chieftain of the Namipu. He was their chieftain because he could see far away into the land of the suns and moons that had not yet risen, at the snowflakes before they fell, the small green worm deep in the ruddy apple, the thought before it was spoken. He was a kind, gentle man. For me, too kind with the whites. He was not a warrior. So the first question that we're going to be thinking about, and that we're not going to answer right this second because you will on your Schoology assignment, is what does Sound of Running Feet mean on page 7 when she says that Chief Joseph is a chieftain but not a warrior? So let's look at a couple of those definitions. So chieftain is the leader of a group of people, but a warrior is a brave or experienced soldier or fighter. So that question is, what does Sound of Running Feet mean when she says that Chief Joseph is a leader of a group of people, but not a warrior, so not a brave or experienced soldier or fighter? Okay, so hold on to that question. The second question is, according to the text on page 7, Chief Joseph was chosen as the people's chieftain because he could see far away into the land of the suns and moons that had not yet risen, the thought before it was spoken. What do these images help you understand about Chief Joseph's character? When you answer this question on your Schoology assignment, you're going to choose the 2 best answers. 2. The next 2 questions are, how do Sound of Running Feet and Chief Joseph's opinion about going to war differ? So Sound of Running Feet thinks one thing and Chief Joseph thinks a different thing about going to war. How are they different? And then how do these opinions show that they believe and value different things? So before you answer all of these questions, there's just a couple more things we need to talk about, and then you're going to go ahead and do that. So we need to look a little deeper at the figurative language within the book. There are, many examples throughout this book. We need to be able to interpret the figurative language to be able to interpret and understand what's going on. So in order to do that, we need to know the difference between literal language and Language. Literal language is when the writer just states facts as they happen. So what the writer is saying is what the writer literally means. So here's an example. He had black hair that he wore in 2 long braids with ribbons. So this is true about this character. He literally has black hair that he wore in 2 long braids. So this is a fact that the writer wrote about this character, and he means exactly what he is saying. Sorry, I keep yawning again, remember? I should do my jumping jacks. All right, anyway. Figurative language means writers use words or expressions with a meaning that is different from the literal interpretation. So what the writer is writing, he might not literally mean. So he could see far into the land of the suns and moons that had not yet risen. So this is a quote on page 7, and what this quote means is when they refer to suns and moons, it's a metaphor. Okay, when the Native Americans refer to suns, they're referring to days, and moons, they're referring to months. So they're saying that he could see far off into kind of like the future or the things that haven't happened yet. So it's figurative language. So he's not literally seeing off into the suns and moons. So let's go on. Here are some more examples of figurative language from the novel. They're locusts and they'll devour us. So Chief Joseph is comparing the white settlers to locusts, and when he's discussing his opinion on whether they should go to war with the settlers, he is saying they will devour them, meaning the Native Americans will not win the war. And then the second one, you spoke plain words to him. So plain words means you're speaking in the simplest terms and you say exactly what you mean. And then the third one, tell me, chief of the Wallowa Nez Perce, one whose intelligence is praised by friends and enemies alike, do you believe that I have spoken to you before and speak to you now with 2 tongues? So this person doesn't actually have 2 tongues. It means they say one thing and they do another. Their words are not matching up with what they're saying. So what you're going to do now is you're going to pause this video and you're going to go answer the 4 questions on the day 13 classroom teacher text dependent questions. And when you're done, I want you to come back and I'm going to play chapters 4 and 5 for you.
Thunder Rolling in the Mountains, Chapter 4. Fire burned in front of the council lodge. Our people were gathered around it, talking together. As we rode up, a deep silence fell upon the clan. Most of them would obey Joseph, their chieftain. All but the young warriors would follow him faithfully, no matter where he led them. He stayed on his horse. Listen to me with your hearts, he said to them, raising his voice against the wind. You have heard the sad news. You know we must leave our home. Some among us, the young warriors, will say to you, do not leave. Do not flee like old women. Fight. We shall live here in peace. Everyone moved closer to him. Now, he said, many soldiers camp on our lake. As many as we have warriors, and they all carry guns. At Fort Lapwai, hundreds of them wait. To the east and to the west, more soldiers are waiting, many more. To escape them would be dodging hail in a hailstorm. The people pressed closer to my father. They were terribly quiet. They felt the truth of his words, like heavy stones falling upon them. From somewhere in the trees, Waliditz called out, Sitting Bull, the great Sioux chieftain, did not run. He fought Custer. He killed all of his soldiers. But where is Sitting Bull now? Chief Joseph asked. There was no answer from Waliditz. He's far away, said my father, hiding in Canada the old lady's country. It would have been best had he stood and fought, said Two Moons. He stumped up and down, swinging his cudgel. There would not be so many white soldiers. But there are too many white soldiers. So many we must go, my father said. Ollicott, my uncle and the best of the warriors, nodded. You speak the truth, he said. He picked up a cherrywood bow. This bow looks strong, he said, but it cannot stand against someone stronger. With a quick movement of his massive hands, he snapped the bow in two. My father held up his hand. In 10 suns we leave Wallowa. Make bundles of all you value. We will not return, not for a long time. What you leave behind, white scavengers will steal. My mother looked sad. In a few weeks, she would have a child. She wanted her child to be born in our land of the wandering waters. Many times she had said this. At my father's words, she sighed once, a deep sigh, but made no protest. The people waited for my father to say more. When he was silent, they wandered off to the lodge. I heard no cries and no weeping. They had swallowed their tears. A moon came up, and the wind faded away. It was a time for love songs, but there were no sweet songs, only the beat of drums. Before I went to bed, I talked to Swan Necklace. The redcoats had gone, and he was guarding their horses in front of his father's lodge. You have heard Chief Joseph speak, I said. Where do you stand? I go with Red Moccasin Tops and Wallitits, he said bravely. You guard their horses, but where are your weapons? It is important to guard their horses, and I have a knife. But you do not carry it. It is hidden in the lodge. Why is it not on your belt? I forgot to put it on my belt. It's dangerous to ride around without a weapon. You're no longer a painter of pictures. You're a fighter against those who want to kill you. I don't feel like a fighter. You will when someone shoots at you. Do you believe that the great chieftain high above will protect me when someone shoots? You must think so. Then you'll be brave. He got up and put his paints away. He was painting a blanket for our wedding. Everything had been done for our wedding, or almost everything. First, Two Moons and his wives had come to talk to my mother and father. They brought many presents, horses, blankets, wooden spoons, and an iron kettle. They asked Chief Joseph in springtime whether I wished to marry their son. My mother came outside where I was hiding, listening under a bush, and asked me if I wanted to marry Swan Necklace. Yes, I said. Do you love him? Since longer than I can remember, I said. There was more to do before the wedding could take place. Chief Joseph in springtime had to give presents to Two Moons and his wives, and Swan Necklace had to finish my buffalo blanket. I asked Swan Necklace about the blanket. I talked to my father last night. He was angry that I even thought about a wedding. He said that there was a war to be fought. He said young husbands make poor warriors. That means we can't be married until the war is over. Not until the one-armed general and his soldiers are driven from Wallowa, my father said. Wait, I said. I went to the lodge and brought back my rifle and a pouch of bullets. Swan Necklace stared at the rifle as if it were a snake. "I don't know how to shoot," he said. "Red Moccasin Tops will teach you," I said. "He will show you how to lie flat on the ground behind a rock, how to lie flat and shoot and push the rock ahead of you, how to ride low on one side of your horse so you can't be seen by your enemy and shoot under the horse's neck." The booming voice of Two Moons called his name. Before he could move, I put the rifle in his hands and slung the pouch of bullets over his shoulder.
Okay, and here is Chapter 5.
Thunder Rolling in the Mountains, Chapter 5. We were on the banks of a mountain ravine. Snow water from many streams poured into the Snake at this place. It came roaring down in a yellow flood. Waves reared up and heavy mist filled the air. Here, Olacott took command. He was very tall and had his hair cut in a roach that stuck up and made him look like a giant. He put a guard on the herds at night and circled them himself. Soldiers camped above us on the side of the riverbank and built fires. They watched to see that we crossed the river. They did not offer to help us. My father said, if General Howard had let us wait until late summer, when the water is low, then we could cross safely. Now we must struggle. "Lose cattle and horses and risk our lives," Olacott said. "They brought us here to drown. They plan to get rid of us forever." Ferocious Bear, a shaggy warrior from the Seven Devils country, spoke up. "We should not move from this shore," he said. "The soldiers wait there on the mountain to see us swept away. Let us stay and kill them." "Kill one, and 10 will take his place," Chief Joseph said. Tuhohoso sat on his spotted pony, gazing at the river while the other chiefs talked. His restless pony pawed the ground. When they fell silent, Tuhohoso gathered air in his huge chest and shouted. He spoke to the one-armed general, wherever he was. "Our great spirit chief made the world," he said. "He put me here on this piece of the earth. This earth is my mother. You tell me to live like the white man and plow the land. Shall I take a knife and tear my mother's bosom? You tell me to cut the grass and make hay. But dare I cut off my mother's hair? The spirit chief gave no man the right to tell another man where he must live and where he must die." His voice trailed off. The leader of the white soldiers did not hear him. My father and Chief Olacott, his brother, did not hear him. They did not listen to him, nor did Tall Elk and Ferocious Bear. The decision had been made to cross the river. "Now we build rafts for the crossing," my father said, "and boats." "Gather our herds," Olacott said. "More than 200 cows have been driven off by the whites since we came to the river, and half that many horses. We'll lose many more before the sun rises again." "We go at dawn," Chief Joseph said. Tuhohoso's eyes flashed, but he said nothing more. That night we built fires, and by their light made rafts and boats for the crossing of the Snake. Men cut alder trees and bound them together with leather thongs. The rafts were strong but hard to handle. The women made bull boats from willow frames and buffalo hides stretched tight. Bull boats looked like melons cut in half. They swirl round and round and bob like corks, yet they are safe in the rushing water. As the sun came up, our 5 bands gathered at the river bank. In my father's band from Wallowa, the land of the wandering waters, there were 62 warriors and 300 women, children, and old people. The warriors were naked except for breechcloths. Their bodies were covered with thick bear grease to keep out the cold, and they wore red feathers in their braided hair. Chief Whitebird, who was very old, brought a band that was next in size to my father's band. It had 51 warriors and 255 women, children, and old people. They came from Whitebird Canyon, beyond the river. Chief Looking Glass was there. He was a great warrior, not as tall as my father. His black braids were streaked with white, and their tips wrapped with brass wire. He wore brass rings in his ears. A round looking glass always hung from a rawhide around his neck. Looking Glass brought 40 warriors and 200 women, children, and the old. They had lived peacefully in a small hidden village on the Clearwater River, yet white miners had found them and treated them badly. They had killed their cattle and stolen their horses. The smallest of our band belonged to quarrelsome Tuhohosot. There were fewer than 50 of these Paluses, but their warriors carried good rifles and were the best buffalo hunters among all the Nimipu. The night was long. Gathered on the bank, we waited for the sun. It came up bright and lit the hills where the soldiers camped. It took a long time, half the morning, for the sun to find its way down the dark canyon walls. It lay on the river in shimmering sheets that blinded us. We couldn't see the river because of the fierce light, so the chiefs decided to make the crossing late in the day. When the light changed, Olcott sent out riders to herd the horses close to the river. Chief Joseph stood at one end of the herd. Ferocious Bear stood in the middle, and Olcott, on his big stallion, stood at the other end. Olcott fired his pistol. The riders shouted. The frightened horses stampeded into the river and swam for their lives. All of them got to the far shore. The cattle were next. Warily, they walked into the shallows, but the riders forced them into the river. Half of the cows and all of the spring calves were lost. Olcott sent out rafts loaded with the things we had saved: clothes, ornaments, buffalo robes, lodge skins, packets of gold dust, bags of coos mush, dried berry cakes, camas roots, and smoked meat and salmon wrapped in deerskin. We lost only 2 rafts. The soldiers watched from the hill, but did not offer to help. The sun moved down in the sky. In its rays, the rushing water sparkled like a river of jewels where Olcott gathered our people. The old women, the old men, and the children were placed on rafts and lashed down. Babies in cradleboards were strapped to their mothers' backs. One end of a stout rope was tied around the waist of a horseman, the other end to a corner of a raft. In this way, with a horseman at each corner and the horses plunging against the swift water while their riders clung desperately to their backs, our people crossed the river. 3 of us were left to go: Chief Joseph, my mother, and myself. One star shone above us. The dark river turned to silver. I had made a bed of buffalo skin for my mother. It was warm, but she complained of the cold. She got up and wrapped a robe around herself and went down to the river. Fires were burning on the far shore. "It's time to go," my father said. Springtime did not answer. She lay down again and pulled the robe over her head. My father got out the last of the bull boats, and I made a bed for my mother in its bottom. He picked her up and put her in the boat, but she slipped from his grasp and went along the bank to a big rock that jutted over the river. "This is no time for play," Chief Joseph said. "I am not playing," Springtime said. "I will have my child here before we cross the river. This is my home. This is Wallowa. Over there where the soldiers watch and fires burn is not our country." "It will be our country soon," my father said. "It is better that our child be born where his home will be." He edged toward her and talked softly. Her back was against a rocky ledge that hung over the river. He moved closer, talking softly, ready to take her in his arms. The ledge was slippery with spray, and she was heavy, but before he could grasp her, she clawed onto the ledge, out of his reach. She sat above the torrent, looking down at him. Her hair was wild with spray. I think that if he had tried to follow my mother, she would have thrown herself into the river. If she had, I would have followed her. "How long do you sit?" Chief Joseph said. He was not pleased. He was not used to being defied by his wife. "Already you shiver with cold. You will be sick. The child will be sick. How long does this madness last?" "Until the child is born," my mother said. "After we cross the river," Chief Joseph said, "it is yet a march before we come to Lapwai, our new home." "In my heart," she said, "this is my home, not over there on the far side of the river." "And in my heart also," I said to her. I said this under my breath, but Chief Joseph heard it. He walked away, gazed for a while at the raging river, then came back. He asked me to build up the fire. In a gentle voice he spoke to Springtime, and she came down from the ledge. As the sky grew light in the east, her child was born. At dawn, we got into the bull boat, and horsemen guided us to the far side.
Okay, boys and girls, and that is all for today for lesson 13. I will see you back here for day 14.